Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and I promise we'll be out of here on time, if not just a little bit early. But to get started, for those of y'all that don't know who I am, my name's Brian Wimbigler. I'm a pharmacist, and I teach pharmacy at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center College of Pharmacy, and we've got campuses in Memphis, Nashville, and Knoxville, and I'm on the Knoxville campus. I specialize in substance use disorders, so I teach that elective and those related modules in the therapeutics course. I also work as one of the state's regional overdose prevention specialists. And today, we're going to talk about motivational interviewing. So this is kind of an introductory type presentation to motivational interviewing. It's kind of to pique your interest and give you some basic knowledge and basic skills. If you're really interested in learning more, there are programs, and we'll probably put on some other advanced motivational interviewing sessions. But this is just to give you some really general understanding and basic tenets of motivational interviewing, and you guys will leave today with some really good concrete skills that you guys can use. So disclosures, I don't have any disclosures to make, and I don't think that Pastor Kyle on the Hill do either, so we'll just move along. So just the very basics. So motivational interviewing, really what you want to focus on is we all have our own beliefs and knowledge as experts in our areas and in our fields. And me specifically, being a pharmacist and knowing a lot about how drugs work, why they work the way they do, how they affect the brain, and all these things, it's really easy for me to look at someone and say, well, this is what's happening to you. This is why you need to do X, Y, and Z. And that doesn't work really well because that X, Y, and Z that I'm talking about, they don't understand. So what you really have to do, it's about autonomy and self-direction. So motivational interviewing, the bare basics is talking to people, listening to people, and then finding what motivates them, and then having them basically realize, oh, this is what's happening. This is why I want to change. Not because you're telling me to change or because I know smoking's bad for me, it causes cancer, but just simple things like, hey, I want to be able to walk up the stairs and not lose my breath. I want to be able to run a marathon. I mean, those are just examples. But the whole thing is, you can't impart your knowledge on someone when they don't understand. So it's that second bullet point. You've got to be very willing to suspend the authoritarian role. So you've got to empathize, and we'll talk about that. It's not just sympathizing, saying, oh, I understand how you're feeling. It's empathizing and feeling that with them and building that bond and really developing that rapport and that sense of trust so that they can really open up to you and really start to enact change. So we're going to go through a few questions, and like with all my talks, I really like audience participation and engagement. It makes it more fun for me. It makes it a lot less boring for you. So we're going to go through these, and you guys can shout them out, raise your hands, whatever. And with these, there's no really right or wrong answer. But I'll tell you what the right answer is. But there's no right. So here we go, just to kind of get a baseline. Until a person is motivated to change, there's not much that we can do. Is that true or false? Yeah, that's false. So there's a lot that we can do, and the bare minimum is giving them information, accurate, reliable information, and then they can take that information, apply it to their own situation, and make a decision that's right for them at that particular time. So there's a lot that we can do, but at the bare minimum, think about COVID vaccines. A lot of people are resistant to that, right? So the bare minimum, you just provide them accurate information so that they can make an informed decision. it usually takes a significant crisis, aka hitting rock bottom, to motivate a person to change. False. And rock bottom is different for everybody. There is no such thing as a universal floor or rock bottom. For some people, you know what rock bottom is? They die. For other people, rock bottom might be they miss a day of work. For other people, it might be they lose their kids. But rock bottom is something that is different for everyone. So here's some examples. And I stopped by the office this morning. The college campus is right there on the UT Medical Center campus, and there's a breezeway between us, and it's a smoke-free campus, right? So I see a woman. She doesn't look very healthy. She's got her IV pole with her, and she's out in the breezeway, kind of tucked away, smoking a cigarette. So look at this. You'd think that having a heart attack would be enough to persuade a man to quit smoking, but it's just not. So if it were that easy, no one would have an opioid problem. No one would continue to smoke. We know smoking's bad. Back in the day, you know, you go to your doctor's office and they'd just be, oh, Camels have a lot more flavor than Marlboros. We didn't know a lot. We know now. So it's those type things. Losing your life savings and your children's college funds because you gamble it away. So these are all things that when, in hindsight, you look at them, you're like, why do you do that? So you've got to really work with people and find out what that inner thing is, what's motivating them. It might be something's missing in their life, whether it's spiritually, it doesn't matter what it is, but you've got to develop that rapport with them so that you can find out what's going on so that you can help them and motivate them to make the change. You would think that the threat of blindness, amputations, and all of the chronic complications of high blood sugar and having diabetes, that would motivate some people to lose some weight, watch their sugar intake, maybe just check their blood sugar more often, maybe take their anti-diabetic medication more frequently. But I see every day it starts with toes, and you'd think, oh, I had a toe amputated because of my uncontrolled diabetes. I'm going to fix something. And then before you know it, it's a amputation below the knee, and then it just progresses, and you're like, was the toe not enough? So these are the type things. So you've got to set your information and what you think aside and find out what motivates who you're working with to make that change. Because clearly what I think, losing a toe, that would do it for me 100%. Doesn't work that way for everybody. Motivation is influenced by human connections. That is true. And if COVID-19 and social isolation has showed us anything, it's that we don't need to be isolated. We had the highest number of overdose deaths we've ever had last year. And the only thing that changed was social isolation. There was a lot of economic hardship. There was a lot of stimulus that was pumped into that. But when you look at the one thing that was consistent across all demographic groups was that social isolation. And if you're struggling with the substance use disorder, guess what? I think it's hard if I'm at the pharmacy to drink. It's just very difficult. I've got technicians, I've got patients. If I'm at my office at the college, I mean, I could probably sneak a drink here or there, you know, pulling out of my desk drawer. But guess what? If I'm working from home, any vice that I might have is magnified because there's nobody there. I'm by myself. And if you're struggling with something, when you're by yourself, hey, if it were that easy just to drop something, everybody would do it. You need that social support. So when you're looking at recovery groups and recovery organizations, the most successful ones are the ones that provide the wraparound counseling services that keep people engaged and build that rapport, and they find out, oh, there's other underlying issues. Maybe it's a housing issue. Maybe it's a job placement issue. But there's other things that factor into what's going on in people's lives. And no one finds that out when you're socially isolated. Resistance to change arises from deep-seated defense mechanisms. Absolutely. So one thing that pops into my mind that we're not really going to talk much about today is adverse childhood experiences. And if you're familiar with the list of ACEs, none of those things are good. And at an early age, children develop defense mechanisms that protect themselves from those situations mentally. So when it comes time to change, you've basically grown up with these terrible things happening, and you've built up your defense mechanisms to keep you mentally and socially sane. And then when it comes time to change, it's really hard. And you have your defense mechanisms built up, and those are hard to break down, especially when there isn't a degree and level of trust in that relationship. Because remember, mistrust, when you look at ACEs, every one of those is a trust issue, right? Because if a parent is abusing you, that's a trust issue. You trust your parents to take care of you. So all of those are trust issues. People choose whether or not they will change. That's true. You can't force anybody to do anything. And if you're a parent, you know this. The more you push, the less successful you're going to be. And you find success in consistency, being there, not being pushy, being there, and imparting wisdom, and then letting them digest that, and then you always hope they make the right decision. But if you push somebody in a direction they're not ready or willing to go in, they won't get there. And if anything, they might put up a wall, and then that path is just cut off. So people definitely choose to change, and it's difficult to make that change if you're working with someone and in your mind you're saying the whole time, I want them to go left. In all of your interactions, there's a subtle or even overt, you're going this way. And when you're working with somebody that has these defense mechanisms, they have life experiences that you might not be aware of or even understand, then by pushing them that way, you're actually making it impossible for them to make that choice on their own. Readiness for change involves a balancing of pros and cons. Absolutely. And this is something that when you're practicing your motivational interviewing, you have to help people understand the pros and cons. And a lot of times, they're going to know what the cons are because they're living them. They know what the bad effects are. And they're wrapped up in that. So what you can do is help them see how change will benefit them. So we know smoking's bad. We know uncontrolled diabetes is bad. Guess what? The people who smoke and the people who have diabetes, they know that. They know it. You need to show them how small changes can lead to benefits that they might not be aware of. So that's a balancing act. And when you're motivating someone, obviously if you're going to motivate them to change, those positives have to far outweigh the negatives. And it might seem really easy. Well, you've got this list of bad things, amputations, blindness, all this stuff with diabetes, and if you lose 15 pounds, all that goes away. That sounds great, right? Well, if you've ever tried to lose weight, it's just not that easy. It is just not that easy. So you've got to find what motivates them and get them there in small steps. Creating motivation for change usually requires confrontation. What do y'all think? So, it shouldn't involve overt confrontation. So, when I say confrontation, an argument. You should never get into an argument with someone you're trying to help. And we'll talk about ways to roll with resistance and some terms to use to reframe the conversation. But it doesn't require confrontation. It does require a discrepancy. So we'll talk about what that means. But a discrepancy is basically saying, okay, you say you don't want lung cancer, but you continue to smoke. That's a discrepancy because we know smoking leads to lung cancer. So if you don't want it, but you're continuing to smoke, that's a discrepancy. So you're not confrontational saying smoking causes cancer. So you're going to get it. You're just wrong. That doesn't help the situation. But you just reframe it in a way that it creates a discrepancy in their mind. They have to see the difference. They have to realize, oh, I'm starting to get it. You just have to reframe it in a way that it makes it easier for them to understand. And no one likes confrontation. And I'll tell you what happens to me and most people, and it's a natural human response. What do you do when you get in a confrontation or conflict with somebody? What's one of the first reactions? Laura? You put a wall up. So look at this hand. So when you're talking to people, you don't want them to build that wall. The whole point is to tear down that wall. So you want to avoid confrontation. And denial is not a patient problem. It's a skill problem. And when I say skill problem, if you're working with someone, it's on you. It's on you to fix that. So if someone is in denial, that's what motivational interviewing is for. That's why you guys are here, to develop the skills to fix this. Because guess what? Everyone is going to be in some degree of denial. Absolutely. But it's not who you're working with. It's not their problem. And if you're working with someone with a substance use disorder, depending on what degree of substance use they're in, remember, their minds aren't working. They're not functioning properly. It's a neurobiological disease. So this denial, it's not on them. It's on you to help fix that. Client motivation is greatly influenced by the counselor or whoever they're working with, and that is absolutely true. Absolutely. So you guys, by coming here, you clearly have a passion and you want to help, and developing your skills will directly translate to the success of the people and the groups that you're working with. So counselor style strongly drives client resistance. So if you're confrontational, and we'll walk through exactly some examples of this, and you'll see what that looks like. Based on how you act and how you counsel someone, you can almost universally predict how they're going to respond. So you guys are one of the biggest determinants of the success of the people that you're helping, the people you're working with, and the people you influence. So even if it's in a social setting, your social connections, your groups, the people that you associate with, you are always influencing those around you. So exactly what are we going to learn today? We're going to define motivational interviewing. So throughout the talk, you'll have a broad understanding of exactly what that means, because we throw out that term all the time. Oh, motivational interviewing, motivational interviewing. But what is it, and what are the parts? The tasks of MI. So what are the steps that you generally need to take to make sure that you are actually doing a motivational interview? The spirit of MI, the principles, and then we're going to talk about some techniques that will help you guys. So before we start learning more about motivational interviewing, let's learn some more about you guys. So what I would like everyone to do is we'll just go around the room, and I'll just point if you don't mind. And we're just going to do first name, and then I'll give you guys a little minute to think about it, not put the first person on the spot. Something about yourself that no one else would know. So just think about that for a minute. And I promise, and make sure it's something that you wouldn't mind people knowing, okay? But just something that, so like Eric and Kyle, it might not be much that you guys don't know about each other. But try to think of something. So let's start, we'll just start over here. First name and something that most people in the room wouldn't know about you.
My name is Amy, and I have a coworker here. Trying to think of something good here, but I'm not going to be able to. I volunteer at Project Chimps in Blue Ridge, Georgia.
Super cool. All right.
My name is Marta, and I have a golden doodle.
My name is Sarah, and something not everyone would know about me is I have 5 dogs and currently 2 foster puppies.
5 dogs and 2 foster puppies.
If you want a puppy, let me know.
What kind of puppies?
They're lab mixes. They came
My
from
favorite
Canada.
lab rescues are my all-time favorite. Eric?
I'm Eric. I've got about 300 miles in Alaska backcountry hiking.
You've got all your toes.
Actually, my feet chain size. It's weird. Carrier packed that on.
I am Patty, and I have 12 grandchildren.
Oh, congratulations.
My name is Jill. I'm not sure one thing. So I have a daughter. She's 13 years old. We start to play volleyball recently.
Ah, cool. Pastor?
My name is Kyle, and my wife doesn't count in this because she knows about everything about me, but I cannot stand touching food after somebody else has eaten off of it. A plate of food.
Well, the majority of my meals come that way, so it's whatever the kids don't eat.
I'm Laura Pritchard, and so my profession now is social work, but I've been a floral designer since I was 17.
Ah, floral designer. Cool. Okay, last but not least.
My name is So Simply Free.
Okay. Well, and I'm not going to leave myself out and just have you all do it. So my name's Brian, and something y'all might not know about me is before this profession that I love and doing all these type things, I used to sell women's shoes. Yep. So we did that exercise because some of y'all don't know each other in the room, and we're all in here together. And sometimes when people walk in the room, we start to form our own ideas about who those people are and what they do and where they might work or where they might come from or what kind of car they might drive or if they're single or married or a plethora of things. But we start developing our own thoughts, so we start judging a book by its cover, right? And we're always taught not to do that. And when you're doing motivational interviewing, you know, the old analogy, you got to peel back the layers of the onion to find out really what's going on, right? So that was just something basic. It's just a first name and then just something interesting about you. So normally what we do is we would go, so name, where you work, you know, where you live, all of those things right out of the gate, right? But with motivational interviewing, by asking someone who may be already stigmatized by a disease, starting with that, that puts a brick on the wall rather than taking a brick off the wall. So start by just wanting to know the person. not their disease, not where they came from, but where they are and who they are. So don't start with the standard things that are going to pigeonhole them or back them into a corner because they're already ashamed that they have a substance use disorder. Or they already know, yeah, I know I had a heart attack because I'm overweight and I smoke. Okay, I know that. So they want to know that you care about them as a person. You care about their family. You care about their welfare. So start like that. So the general tasks of motivational interviewing are to engage. So that's part of engagement. So when you start talking about more personal things, more developing that human connection, that facilitates engagement. That gets people buy-in. It helps them start opening up. You want to focus what's on important to the patient regarding behavior, health, and welfare. And that's going to be different, and you're not going to know that if you don't talk to them and get to know them. And we're going to talk about those strategies. Evoke the patient's personal motivation for change. That's one of the central tenets. So you're going to do those first two steps, and then you're going to figure out, you're going to engage them first. You're going to figure out what their motivation is, and you have to figure out their motivation or you can't evoke the change because you have to find, those are linked. So if they're motivated by something, that is what you're going to attach to, and that's what's going to evoke the change in them. And then once you've got that going, you need to negotiate plans. And negotiate is an intentional term because this isn't a straight line. It's not A to B. It might be A to B to C to D to E to F to G, and then you start over because guess what? Relapse is part of any disease. So you might have to go back to A. So it's not a straight line path. So you need to negotiate with them small steps, small targets, small goals, and make it very clear to them that if they stumble or if they fall, that you're there to help them start over or pick up where they left off. And you're there to motivate them, not chastise them for a slip up. So the spirit of MI revolves around compassion. So you've got to have compassion for the people you're working with. So a lot of the regional overdose prevention specialists are also peer recovery support specialists. So they can empathize and they've got compassion because they've been there and they identify with the population they're working with. So compassion. Collaboration. So this is collaboration between you and the person or groups that you're working with. And also, you should bring to bear all of the resources that you have at your disposal that are appropriate to help people. You should bring it all. So you need to collaborate. So don't silo yourself. Lean on other people. So if I've got a spiritual question, hey, I'm not your guy. I'm Catholic. We don't study the Bible. We drink wine on Sundays. We dance. We have a good time.
I'm Catholic too, that's why I'm up front.
Yeah, see? So if I've got a real deep spiritual question about the good book, I'm going to ask one of these guys because I don't know where to look. If you give me a verse and I go to other churches sometimes and I'm looking at the hymnal, I'm like, gosh, how am I going to find this in here? See, and that's the thing. It's just different. Everyone's different. I'm no more or less spiritual than someone who's a Methodist or Baptist or Protestant, but we just learn different things. So for me, the Bible's foreign and it's scary. It's scary to me. So that's what you've got to figure out. And if you didn't get to know me, you would never know that. And maybe you're preaching, talking about Scripture, and I don't know what that is. So with motivational interviewing, you've got to figure out what that motivation is and baseline knowledge and just build off of that.